Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What the hell are they? I hear you cry. Well, my friend Polly and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So, if you're ready, here we go.
So this morning, so this was yours, Lucy. So we're going to be talking about the people that we surround ourselves with and the importance of
Yes.
that. So do you want to kick this off this morning?
Yeah, sure. So, I think we have probably talked about this in a roundabout way. I'm not sure whether we've ever done a whole Monday motivation on this topic, but it's something that over the last few years I've sort of realized the huge importance of who we surround ourselves with. And everybody's heard that saying. I don't know whether it was I don't know who it originated with, but it's definitely in James Clear's Atomic Habits. We become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, and it's so damn true. And I just think I certainly didn't used to even think about the impact of the people I was hanging out with. I didn't even think about their impact on my life at all. It just never occurred to me. I just, spent time with who I spent time with. Didn't matter whether they were negative, whether they were, whatever. But I think the thing is to realize how massively the people we hang out with impact the way that we're feeling, the way that we're thinking, and also what we believe ourselves to be capable of. And I think this is a really big one, especially in the context of what you and I talk about in the whole kind of, self-development, personal growthy kind of stuff. I've realized that it's to sort of doing what I'm doing with my life. One of the most important things is to make sure that I spend time with people who reinforce my belief that things are possible, and I didn't used to do that. And certainly on this journey that both you and I are on, it's incredibly important to have those people, because so often the people around us, like often our friends and family, are kind of the naysayers in our lives in many ways. Like if we express that we want to, I don't know, start a business, then it's very likely that we're gonna get the kind of, oh, I don't know about that, oh, that's a bit risky, oh, you really need a stable job and a pension and healthcare and and all this kind of stuff. So I just think it's so incredibly important to surround ourselves with people who are kind of actually slightly ahead on the journey that we're on. So it's good to sort of be in rooms with people who inspire you and who inspire you to reach for more. So yeah, I think this is a really big topic. And one of the things actually that I always say when I talk about this is that it doesn't necessarily the average of those 5 people, they don't necessarily have to be people that you are physically with in person. These can be people that, like you and I, we see each other on Zooms. It can be that, for example, and really importantly, it can be people whose, for example, podcasts you listen to, or whose audiobooks you listen to. Those influences of those people in our lives don't have to be actually in human form, in our presence in the same room as us. It can very much be people who we listen to. And that's one thing that I have really kind of made a massive priority in my life over the last 4 or 5 years. It's making sure that I'm regularly, as in daily, consuming content from people who I find inspirational, and who kind of hold me to account, and who help me realize what is possible and what I can achieve when I set my mind to it. And also, it's really so important to ask yourself whether there might be some people in your life who do the opposite of that, and who bring you down, and who are very, very negative. And I used to be one of those negative people, not going to lie. Like I've trained, and we've talked about this, I've trained myself to, cultivate a more positive mindset. And the thing is, when we don't realize that when we're hanging around with people who are constantly moaning or complaining or being negative, it's not just going on for them. That is rubbing off on us. It really, even if we don't realize it, even if we're not aware of it, if we're spending time with somebody who just continually goes on about the state of the world, or the terrible things that are happening in the news, or the fact that the cost of living is just extortionate, and all of these kinds of things, it's impacting the way that we think and the way that we feel. So this really is such an important thing to be mindful of, I think, in our everyday lives.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always kind of think there are two types of people. There's the radiators, the ones who shine, who just give out amazingly good vibes and positivity and who make you feel good and lift you up. And there are the drains who just drain your energy and just take it away from you and just make you feel crap after
Yeah,
you've been hanging out with them. And we all know those types of people. And yet, and so that is why it's so important to be mindful of, are you hanging out with the drains who just make you feel exhausted, who make you feel really bad about yourself, who you really don't want to spend time with? Or are you seeking out the radiators? I mean, I'm sure we all do it. We get invited to something and it's like, oh, I don't really want to go. That person always makes me feel a bit rubbish at the end of it, and yet you say yes. I must admit, I've got so much better and stronger nowadays to say, no, I don't want to do that.
yeah,
And it's really about placing those boundaries in, putting those strong boundaries in place. Because if we say yes, just because we ought to, just because we've had a relationship with these people in some form, way, capacity at some point in our life, doesn't mean we actually have to hang out with them. And I know we're all worried about offending someone's feelings or upsetting. What are they going to think of us? But actually, it's more important to think about our own energy
yeah,
and how we respond to that
yeah,
person. And family obviously is slightly different, we can't choose our family. So it's that even more important that you put strong boundaries in place about how often you want to see them, what is
mm,
acceptable behavior, what isn't acceptable behavior.
mm,
But we do have some sort of control, and we often forget about that. We can say no to people. We can say no to things which we're invited to do. We can
yeah,
say, I can't actually see you right now because X, Y, and Z. Or you just have to say no. No is a sentence in its own right.
yeah,
So I think it's really important to remember that. And on the other end of the scale, in terms of finding people who light you up, who radiate amazing energy, who make you feel amazing, seek them out. As you said, you could be someone you're following on Instagram. It could be an amazing mentor. Go and seek them out and go and just spend time with them and hang out with them. I've recently got so much better at asking if there's someone who I really want to go and hang out with or I want to do something with. I just ask them, I ask, would you be interested in X, Y, or Z? And generally, 9 times out of 10, people say yes. They say yes if you're going to bring something as well. And that's just such an amazing way to elevate your energy and bring you up. And as you said, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the majority of our time with. So if you want to become someone who you can see doing the things, go and seek them out. Go and immerse yourself in what they are doing. If they are someone who's got a podcast, go and listen to the episodes. Go and really immerse yourself into it. This has really made me think, Lucy, actually, of my eldest, Felix, because I had a conversation with him last week. He's at Durham University doing engineering. And he was telling me about a project he's just done with, there's 6 of them in a group. They're all big brains. They're all very bright boys. And he was telling me about the other boys in the group. And oh my goodness, it was for the first time, really, I kind of got what he is getting out of university really the most. So one of them is already at, they're in their second year at uni. He's designing some drone which he's hoping is going to zap malarial microbes to help, find a solution to the malaria issue. He's got another one. He's already, I mean, these boys were just all doing these incredible things. And I could just see when he was telling me about it, I was just like, my goodness, he is surrounding himself with these people who are out in the world, these young people out in the world doing these amazing things, trying to find solutions to these big problems of the world. How good is that? What he's going to be getting out of that. And that's what we all want. We all want to be inspired by other, because we just spur each other on, and that energy is transferred from one to the other. So yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was quite interesting.
No, that's so interesting. And just picking up on what you were saying about seeking people, because I think it's very easy to just sort of stay stuck in those groups of people who maybe have been in our life for years. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with them, but I think it is important to remember that if you sort of think about your friendships and you realize that actually you need people who are more sort of motivating or inspirational, or who are looking to grow, or whatever it is. Maybe you're looking for somebody who's really adventurous, maybe you're looking for somebody who's single, or doesn't have kids, or whatever it is. But it's, we do have it in our power to seek people out. And funnily enough, I did a mini-sode. I can't remember whether it's the one that just went out on Saturday or the one that's going out this coming Saturday. I think it went out on Saturday, about adult friendships. And I was talking about Mel Robbins' Let Them theory, because she does this brilliant section in the Let Them theory about adult friendships, and how, friendships ain't just going to fall into our laps. And one thing I talk about on my podcast as well, and have done so a few times, is this idea that we have to take responsibility for our lives. And I think we live in this world where we're always looking to somebody else to take responsibility. Do you know what I mean? We're always looking to sort of point fingers at, oh, it's that person's fault, or it's that person's fault, or it's the fault of this. And so often we don't take responsibility for our lives. But actually, when you start taking responsibility for yourself and your life, it's really freeing, because it basically gives you back control. And it's the same with friendships. We have to take responsibility for finding and cultivating friendships that are going to be beneficial to our lives and be beneficial to the other person's life. It's as simple as that. They're not going to rock up at our door sort of sitting and watching Netflix. We have to go out there and make shit happen. And I love what you say about Felix surrounding himself with those people, because I bet he comes away from that group feeling really uplifted and really inspired. And that is ultimately how we want to feel when we leave whoever we've been hanging out with. So I think the first step is to just start noticing how you feel when you step away from someone that you've been spending time with. Do you, go back to the drain and the radiator thing, do you feel drained? Like our body is going to tell us, always, our body is going to tell us what we need to know. Do we feel good? Or do we feel like, oh my God, do we feel down? Do we feel depressed? Do we feel anxious? How do we actually feel after we've been hanging out with someone? And the truth is that, so often I think we're spending time with people who've been in our life for, many, many years, but aren't necessarily our people anymore. And I think we have to realize also that friendships end, friendships move on. And sometimes people come into your life and then they go out of your life a bit, and then they might come back into your life, or they might never come back into your life. And that's okay. Friendships are fluid. And I think we sort of cling on to this idea that when we become friends with somebody, we have to stay friends with them forever and ever and ever and ever. But it's not the case. We do get to be intentional about our friendships, like we do with everything else. We do get to pick and choose the people who are right for our life right now. And if you're growing, and if you're expanding, and if you're changing, then your friendships are going to change along with you. And some of them are going to be, on that journey with you, and some of them aren't. And that's okay. So I think, the first thing is to really start noticing how the people in your life make you feel. And also, are they the kind of people that you aspire to be like? Are the people that you're spending time with, are they living a life that you aspire to live? Because I think that says quite a lot. If you're, because whoever you are spending time with, the conversations that you are having with those people are going to be, whether you like it or not, and whether you know it or not, they are going to be impacting and affecting the way that you feel about yourself and about life.
Yeah.
And it is just so, so, so important to just take a minute and really be honest with yourself about who lifts you up and who you walk away from feeling just like completely drained. But yeah, you know, we do get to continue to seek out friendships no matter how old we are. And it's not easy making friends as an adult. It's much easier, like, you know, your son is at university. It's much easier to find your people at university because it's just set up in a way that you're going to just come across people every day, and there are parties and there are classes and all the rest of it. So as adults, we have to make more of an effort. But again, it's about taking responsibility. And if you know that you need someone who is a bit more this or a bit less that, you can go out and actually find people.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It can be hard to make friends. And, I find it hard enough just to nurture the friends that I've got, making sure that I see them enough because there are lots of people who I really do want to hang out with, and life is busy. So actually just even making time for the friends who I really want to see is important. It's really important to me. And actually, if you don't see a really good friend for a long time, a really good friend, it doesn't really matter because
Yeah,
it's just like you saw them yesterday whenever you do see
exactly.
them, even if it's been a few years. Those kind of friends are always going to be
Yeah,
there.
totally.
And yeah, friends come and go. I've seen that throughout my life. Some friends do come and go. They're there for a certain period of your life and then they just fall away. But then they may come back. And I think you just have to accept that. I do feel like we all expect to keep our friends forever and ever. And some people do. And that's okay. We're all very, very different. And I know that I'm a totally different person to how I was, for example, when I was at university. And so my friendships reflect that
Mm,
because I am so different. What you were saying about the energy is important because for me, the biggest compliment anyone can ever give me is, oh my gosh, I love your energy. Your
yeah.
energy is amazing. That for me is like the best possible compliment because we feel it. It's what you give off. We like attracts like. So if you're feeling the good vibes from somebody else, then that's what it's all about ultimately. And the other thing I was going to say about what you said is, although it can be hard to find friends these days, actually, it's probably in a way never been easier because we now live in this global community. In the past, we would have just been surrounded with the people who we see day to day at work, at home, in the surrounding area where we live. Nowadays, we are connected on a global scale. So there are groups of people around the world. And so you can find your people using those groups. So, well, you're a great example, Lucy. People who are single, who are child free, they can all come together, in your membership, Thrive
Yeah.
Solo, and find each other. And so you can really then relate to one
Mm,
another so
mm,
well. And that's all we want. It's to be able to find people who make you feel good. And
yeah.
it's like the menopause as well. Menopause was a really big one for me. At the time when it was happening with me, there wasn't really, no one was talking about it. It was
Mm,
all swept under the carpet. It all felt quite taboo. So nobody really talked about it. But the
mm,
moment you've open up, you talk to somebody else, you talk to a friend who's going through a similar situation, experiencing the same as you, and you share it. Oh my goodness, it makes you feel so much better. You realize you're not alone.
mm,
Shared experiences are so powerful. And now that's no surprising. I did a presentation last week about menopause. And so I did a quick search because I was talking about how important it is to talk about it, to find people who lift you up, who inspire you. And my goodness, the number of groups out there which people can go and join, it was unbelievable. You can join groups for people who've had cancer and menopause, who've been thrown into menopause support groups, for LGBT Q plus people, there's special menopause groups. There's group, anybody who's going through menopause, you can find your own specific group to help you, and that is just incredible. We've come so far, and they're global people, but you'll all have something in common. So yeah, that's key, and just to find people who make you laugh, lift you up. And that's another point. If someone makes you laughter's the best medicine for anything. So if someone makes you laugh and lifts you up, then I'm there for it.
Totally. And again, going back to what you were saying about the whole sort of global community, again, we don't, like, the people we hang out with, we don't have to hang out with them in person like that. Like, you and I have a lot of people in my life who I consider good friends, who I hang out with, quote unquote, on a Zoom screen. But that is, and yes, it's not the same as being in person, but actually it is, in terms of the impact that friendship is having on your life. There are a few people who I speak to on Zoom like every week, who I have a connection with, and I count them as the 5 of those people in my life who I become the average of. So I just really want to stress that like you say, we can meet people so much easier in many ways in today's world, and the people who are influencing you, because ultimately what this is about is influence, because the people who you are hanging out with are influencing you in one way or the other.
Yeah.
And they can be influencing you in a bad way, or they can be influencing you in a good way. And so when you think about the people that you hang out with, are you hanging out with a friend who just sits and bitches about other people for the entire evening, or is really negative? I said that earlier, but this is that this is going to influence the way that you then are, because the people we surround ourselves with, they influence who we become as people. So ask yourself, who do I want to be? What kind of person do I actually want to be? And are the people I'm hanging out with, are they the kind of people that I want to be? Or am I just hanging out with them because I've known them for a long time, or because of the convenience, because they live around the corner, whatever it may be? But I feel really passionate about this topic because it's so hugely important, and I just don't think it's something that we think about enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. So funny. I saw my parents at the weekend, and my father, my dad, listens to these every Thursday when they come out on Thursday Thoughts, and he
Oh my God.
cannot believe that you and I have never met in person. He's like, "What? What do you mean you've never actually met in person?" And I was like, "No, we've never met it. We will,
We
Matt. We will. Obviously,
will,
we're
we
going to,
will.
we will." But he was just like amazed, and I suppose that's probably because we are in a slightly more, we're in a different sort of time where we're so used to doing an awful lot on a screen, digital, in a digital way. Not that I want to be doing this all the time, because sometimes I find it quite draining to be constantly in front of a screen, and actually nothing really is better than a a face-to-face encounter in some way. However, I totally agree. It is 100% possible to form really good relationships because you talk probably just as much, and sometimes even more so, face-to-face on a screen
Yeah,
like this than if you
yeah,
were in person, because it's so easy. It's so easy just to click a button and then you're there. Whereas actually, sometimes to actually go and physically see someone, it requires a lot more time and effort and travel
yeah.
and all those sorts of
And
things.
and
So,
also,
yeah,
sorry,
go
no,
on.
sorry, love. Sorry, I thought you finished. Sorry,
Yeah,
carry
no, I
on. I
have.
didn't
Yeah,
mean
no,
to.
I finished.
Yeah, no, all I was going to say is also the other thing about, like, for example, our relationship and how many conversations we've had on Zoom. Well, neither of us are getting distracted by our phones, because when you're on a Zoom with somebody,
Yeah, good
you are
point.
there to speak to that person.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're with a friend in real life, you could, one of you's like checking your phone, or what, you know what I mean? It's just actually much easier to be distracted. Whereas when you're talking to a friend like this, or on a FaceTime, you sort of have no choice but to just get into the conversation. Do you know what this is making me think, Polly? Wouldn't it be mental if we did a Monday motivation in the same room, and we sat and we talked in the same room on Instagram Live? That
Okay,
would be
right, we're going to do
so
that. let's
weird.
do it. Let's
That's
do
like, it
it.
scares me. Imagine if we just sat there like, I haven't got anything to say.
We might decide that we don't really like each other anymore.
But can you imagine how weird that would be?
Yeah,
Oh
it would.
my God.
It would.
We should.
Have you ever done a podcast? Because have you ever done a podcast recording with someone in the same room, or do you always do it on Zoom?
The only podcast episode I've ever done with someone in the same room as me was me and my niece. We did it in my flat in London, and we sat on the sofa and we recorded it. And but apart from that, no, I have never. And it's weird because it doesn't even ever occur to me now to do it. Because apart from anything else, had Zoom not been a thing when I started the podcast, I wouldn't have even thought about starting a podcast because I'd have been like, well, how the hell am I going to get all these people to come to London? You know, when I was living in London then, and so actually it's made things, certainly in terms of podcasting, much easier. But my dream is that one day I'll have a beautiful studio with 2 sofas and people will actually come in and I'll interview them in the flesh with like a really good microphone and someone producing it and someone editing it and someone finding the fucking guests. That is the dream down the line.
Yeah. No, I mean, that would be so good, wouldn't it?
That's
Yeah,
truly what I want. That is what that is. I'm determined that that's going to happen at some
because
point down the line.
I just on that note, in terms of relationships and the people who you surround with, I suppose this is kind of linked. All the big podcasters like to do their interviews in person. And I think that is probably because you do pick up more on your body language and
Yeah,
you probably can get deeper in terms of the conversation that you can have.
yeah,
However, not to take away from doing it on Zoom, you can still have really good conversations and you can still speak to people all over the world. For me, also, just in terms of the tech, I just don't have a tech set up,
yeah,
as you say, to do it in person. It's so much
yeah.
easier to do it online. But yes, it's anyway, back to the subject of, the importance of who we surround ourselves with, just really focusing on spending more time with the people you love and who make you feel good, and just a little bit less time, a lot less time with those that don't.
Yeah.
And really, it's that simple,
It
isn't it?
really is. But again, just going back to what we were saying about the sort of influence that people have on you, like every conversation that I have with you or that we have with each other, I feel like that is always a good influence on me because inevitably you and I are talking about our businesses. We're talking about, if we're stuck with something, we're reminding each other of what is possible. We're reminding each other of, where we're going, what we want. We're kind of encouraging each other. So I think our relationship is actually a really good example of the kind of relationship that, I'm grateful to have in my
Yeah,
life because,
yeah,
because I feel good whenever I speak to you. I feel good. I feel uplifted. I feel energized.
yeah.
So, that's so
And
important, isn't it?
and also, what's so fascinating about our relationship is that we lead very different lives in the sense that you're
Yeah.
single, you don't have kids, and I've got 3 children. I'm married. We're poles apart in
Yeah.
that sense. Yet we both have a very common
Yeah.
thread running through in terms of what we are trying to achieve
Yeah.
with our businesses and what we're doing and the kind of things we
Yeah.
talk about. So just to bear that in mind as well, it's more about the energy that we give each other as
Yeah.
opposed to, you don't have to have every single thing in common because,
Yeah.
we don't.
Yeah, and also you have different. I know we're going to wrap up, aren't we? Because
Yeah.
it's 9:30. But also, I think you have different friends for different things. Like I definitely have, and I think we probably all have this to one. To a certain to a certain extent, is there are certain friends that you do certain things with. There are certain friends that you have certain conversations. Like I have friends who I absolutely. I'm not talking to them about my business. There are certain friends who I'm absolutely not talking to about all the woo woo stuff I go on about. I avoid those topics, but I talk to them about other things so that we have different relationships and different friends for different parts of ourselves. Not meaning that you're a different, I'm not saying I'm a different person with each friend. I'm the same person, but I definitely certain parts of my personality and interest come out in very different ways with very different friends. I think that's fine to have like lots of different, you might have
Yeah.
your kind of party friend or your serious friend or your friend who always gives you really good advice or whatever it is. So don't know what I'm going on about. reference for
Yeah,
that.
no, it's totally true, but it's exactly, and I think we all do, absolutely. Though you absolutely, you kind of have friends for different areas of your life, and
Yeah,
that's all really good. And
yeah,
as long as they make you feel good
yeah,
and they light you up and they
yeah,
inspire you in some way. But some friends don't necessarily have to inspire you. You can have just friends who you go out when you go out. You just have so much fun and you have the best laugh with.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so
exactly.
it's just really it's about how you feel after you have spent time with them. I think is the most important thing.
100%. A very good note to end on. My gosh, we've gone 2 minutes over. How very dare we?
I was 1 minute late though,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Basically balanced out.
Yeah,
All right, love.
exactly. All right.
Have a
Thank you everyone who's been watching, listening, and we'll see you next week.
bye, love. Have a good day. Speak to you
All right.
later. Bye, babe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.